Hey guys, how we doing? So we're back on another Super Eye Patch Wolf video. I seen this and I thought this would be interesting because he's an interesting guy, has some interesting points to make and makes some interesting videos. So let's just get straight into this. This is what makes a hero feel real.
I've never really found heroes particularly interesting.
Fair enough.
I think too often they're constrained by the fact that they need to be a surrogate for the audience or live up to some false ideal of a morally just person.
Right.
And it can make for characters that are, well, a little bland.
Boring,
and
yeah.
predictable.
Mm-hmm.
But occasionally I'll come across a character who makes me question everything I understand a hero to be. One that shatters the ideals of the heroic archetype and becomes something different and special. And one example I recently experienced of this was from the indie RPG Lisa the Painful and its hero, Brad.
Okay.
The game starts with Brad's adoptive daughter Buddy being kidnapped, and so he sets out on a quest to rescue her. But as you travel through the broken post-apocalypse of Lisa's world, things with Brad start to get more complicated.
Okay.
You see, Buddy is also the last female on Earth and humanity's final hope against extinction, a role that she herself is willing to embrace. But, scarred by a lifetime of abuse and addiction, Brad sees Buddy as his last chance for personal redemption, and commits irredeemable acts of violence in order to get her back.
Whoa.
And it frames Brad in this really interesting way. You can see on a personal level how he's really trying to do good, but how his experiences have left him so broken that he's not actually able to tell how much damage he's doing to the people and world around him, including Buddy herself.
Oh wow.
Brad is the hero of this story, but his actions are distinctly unheroic.
Right.
Rather than an ideal of what a person should be, Brad just felt like a person.
Yeah.
And this is how this little collection of pixels has become one of the most tangible and believable heroes I've experienced in years.
Well, that's interesting.
And it's made me wonder, where is the line where a character goes from being an archetypical definition of the standard hero to something imperfect but believable?
Believable, yeah.
Someone who serves as more than just a fantasy for the audience and stays with them long after the story is finished. In other words, what makes a hero feel real?
There we go. I like we always uses the title in the video.
So, before we get started, I think it's worth getting technical about what we mean by the term hero, as it's a pretty nebulous term. So for the purposes of this video, we'll say that a hero is someone from whose perspective we view the story, the driving motivator of that story, and someone who is either exceptional or in pursuit of an exceptional goal. And it's this last one that separates a protagonist from a hero. Mima from Perfect Blue is a protagonist, Ryuko from Kill la Kill is a hero. So with that definition in tow, we can start to look at the kind of heroes that appear in media. And the best way I can think of tackling this is breaking heroes down into two scales. The relatable/powerful scale and the amoral/virtuous scale. Let's start off with our relatable/powerful scale. The closer a hero is to the left here, the more like a regular person they become, with abilities and powers that more closely resemble the average human. And the closer to the right, the more they begin to resemble heroes of classic Greek myth, supremely powerful beings with the ability to drastically affect the world around them. But I should mention, when I say powerful, that is contextual to the story being told. So on a small scale, that could be a character like Gregory House from the TV show House. He is the most powerful character of that show because his medical expertise elevates him above everyone else. But if you put him in the world of Dragon Ball Z, he'd basically be just another civilian. But in the context of his own show, he carries about as much narrative weight as Goku does in DBZ.
And fair enough.
Yes, that probably is the strangest analogy I've made on this channel.
You're not wrong.
But the point is that a hero's general power is defined by their ability to affect both the environment as well as other characters relative to the story being told. So if Superman lived on a planet of supermen, he would no longer be considered powerful in the context of that story.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have our amoral/virtuous scale. We're going to dive into this a little more later, but to briefly summarize, on the right we have heroes of the most stringent moral fiber, champions of justice and peace, and on the left we have heroes that can be considered amoral, ones who won't let conventional morality get in the way of their goals.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so with that in mind, watch what happens when we combine these two scales into a graph. It creates a datascape across which we can view every type of hero.
Right.
From the most classical definition of the benevolent guiding demigod to the most morally ambiguous mess of a human being. And it's here where we can see the main issue with how heroes are written. While this graph is by no means a comprehensive list of heroes, I think it is fair to say that the vast majority of them across all media will belong to this quadrant up here in the top right. And what this means is that a lot of heroes start to feel very, very similar, whether it's the action boys of shonen manga, the superheroes of American comics, or the gunmen of Western video games. Powerful, virtuous demigods, more of a classical example of what people should be as opposed to how they actually are. And don't get me wrong, I don't have an issue with the odd aspirational fantasy here and there,
yes.
but see it enough times and it starts to grow pretty stagnant, which is why I think myself and so many others tend to find their villainous counterparts so much more appealing.
Interesting,
and so the question now is, why do so many different industries keep creating heroes?
Paul explains why I like a good bad guy.
Well, what I think that comes back to is a theory put forward by Joseph Campbell in his 1949 book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces.
Okay.
If you've ever taken a film class or studied up on narrative at all, you've most likely come across it. It outlines the 3 major stages and 17 sub-stages of a narrative structure called the hero's journey, one that was adopted and massively popularized by 1977's Star Wars, and has become deeply embedded in the cultural consciousness sense. And while we don't have time to go through every step of it, what it essentially comes down to is a young hero who is called to adventure, obtains some great power, vanquishes some great evil, and uses that new power for the greater good of mankind. I'm going to leave a link in the description if you'd like to read up more about it, as it's admittedly a pretty useful lens to view stories through. But the problem is it's become the gold standard of the heroic narrative.
Yeah,
any story
everyone follows it.
Will most likely at least be in part based off it or influenced by those that have. But the thing is, the hero's journey was never meant to be a narrative guide. It was originally just an observation of a set of repeating patterns found in myth and legend across the world, and was first identified by an anthropologist and not a writer. And where this becomes an issue is that the hero's journey only necessitates a very specific type of hero. Someone who is exceptionally powerful or has the potential to be, who is going to use that power for the greater good of mankind. In other words, the strong, virtuous power fantasy we see in the top right of our graph. And this has led to what I can only refer to as the memification of the modern day hero. Good guys who do good things because they are good, who will inevitably beat the bad guys because they are bad. Fun fantasies for sure, but not something that feels like an actual person. And so I think the solution of this is to get away from the traditional idea of the mythical heroic fantasy. And the advantage of having our graph is that we can see 2 very distinct ways of doing this. And that is characters who don't fit the traditional idea of a heroic
This is an interesting way of breaking it all down. I like that.
Are freed from the conventions of the traditional hero. For example, look what happens when we scale back on the x-axis, weakening a character's ability to affect the world around them. We get characters like Gon from Hunter x Hunter, Shinji from Evangelion, or even Deku from Hero Academia. And while each of these characters certainly has elements of power fantasy to them, they are essentially at the mercy of the world around them.
Yeah, definitely.
But this also gives us a very fundamental connection to them.
They're not very godlike.
They, like us, cannot solve their problems through sheer force of will. There's people in positions of much greater power than them, and aspects of their lives they just can't control. And in the same way we're not able to affect global politics or the economy, they only have a very limited capacity to affect the world around them, making it all the more significant when they actually do, but also making them feel more like regular people and not just legends of myth. The second solution our graph presents is a little more complicated, and to really dive into it, we first need to take a look at the idea of giving heroes a flaw.
Right.
This is probably the most common piece of writing advice I came across while researching this video, but it's also one of the most easily misunderstood, as a flaw doesn't necessarily make a character more believable or compelling. Let's take Superman, for example.
Okay.
What is Superman's flaw? Well, it's his vulnerability to kryptonite, right?
Yeah.
Well, I actually don't think it is. Superman's weakness to kryptonite isn't so much a character flaw as it is a plot mechanic. It's a way for a writer to create stakes for a character whose primary attribute is that he's invincible. But as long as there's no kryptonite present in a given situation, it's not going to affect how Superman sees the world or how he relates to those around him. Now, compare that to Alan Moore's deconstruction of Superman from 1986's Watchmen in the character of Dr. Manhattan.
Wow.
Once a normal scientist who, after a molecular mishap, becomes an invulnerable demigod with nothing even resembling a weakness. But his flaw is how his developing powers change his relationship to the world around him.
He loses his
eyes
humanity,
that can
doesn't
see
he?
atoms vibrate. He experiences the past, present, and future all at once,
same time,
and is even partial to the grander mysteries of science and the physical universe. And as his powers develop, he becomes less and less human, losing the ability to relate to the basic wants and desires of the average person, which causes him to view mankind as just another cluster of bacteria and not anything to be protected or saved. And so, while Dr. Manhattan doesn't have a physical weakness, he does have a fundamental issue to his makeup that alienates him from the rest of humanity as well as conventional morality. And it gives the character a nuance that feels real and sad. It's not a simple case of his powers turning him evil, but that he perceives the concept of good and evil in an entirely different way to the average person. And this is where things really start to get interesting, because it shows that good and evil, as much as we would like to believe otherwise, are subjective concepts, varying greatly depending on who you ask. And so a hero's capacity to do good is going to be greatly altered by that hero's perception of what good actually is. And a great recent example of this is the hero killer Stain from My Hero Academia. What I think is so interesting about Stain is that his flaw is that he believes in the ideal of the selfless, virtuous hero so intensely that anyone who falls out of it immediately becomes a villain in his eyes. He's disgusted by the industrialized, regulated
everyone's
version
just
of the
labeled
hero
a hero
created by Hero Academia's world, that he launches his one-man war of ideology, attempting to purge the streets of heroes he deems impure and create a society of ideal heroics. And the thing is, it's working. Any city he operates out of sees a dramatic fall in crime, and so while he does do a lot of damage, the result of his actions could potentially lead to many more lives being saved. Of course, Stain isn't a hero. He's the villain of the hero killer arc. But this brings us to my final point. In my video on villains, I said something to the effect of, I think the idea of villainy that's always appealed to me the most is the idea that the only thing separating heroes and villains is one very bad day or a couple of poor decisions, which isn't a statement original to me. You can see it echoed in many writings about villains. But the odd thing is that I never hear it applied to heroes. Even though if it's true for villains, doesn't that mean it's implicitly true for heroes as well? Aren't really the two just the one side of the same coin? Exceptional people who have taken up a cause, the morality of which can only really be judged on a subjective level. There are no absolutes in good and evil, and in the same way you can't view villains as insipidly evil characters cackling and twirling their mustaches, it's equally important to not view heroes as perfect paragons of strength and morality. And by letting them be weak, by letting them be truly flawed, we shatter the myth and expose the person underneath. And it's only from here that heroes have the space to learn and grow and fail, where their actions begin to carry real weight and purpose, where victories and consequences really matter. It's from here that a hero starts to feel like an actual person. from here, they start to feel real.
Cool video. Very cool video. I like
Friends, thank you so much for joining me today. As ever, I really
He likes his graphs, doesn't he?
If you'd like to help this channel so that I can keep making content like this, then consider heading over to patreon.com/supereyepatchwolf, where you can see your name listed with all my personal heroes right here, each and every one of which I am incredibly grateful. I'm going to be back soon with another video, but in the meantime, you can find me over on the Let's Fight a Boss video game podcast, or on Twitter @eyepatchwolf. Friends, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.
Cool. Good video. Very good. Very good. Very interesting look at what makes a hero feel real. I like that. It's like, if they're relatable in some way, then yes, it's more realistic. That's why I'm really enjoying Hunter x Hunter at the moment, I suppose. Gon's just like, he's not like this overpowered, like, god. He's just a person in this like world of hunters that's trying to keep going and find his dad and other stuff. And yeah, Deku again isn't the most powerful person. He gets beat down every now and then, and he's trying. Yeah, that was a really good video. I like it a lot. So yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave comments down below. Let me know what I should watch and discuss in future videos, and I'll see you guys, yes, all of you guys, next time.